and welcome to Baha'i Blogcast with me, your host, Rainn Wilson. This is where I interview members of the Baha'i Faith and other friends from all over the world about their hearts and minds and souls, their spiritual journeys, what they're interested in, and what makes them tick. Enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to Baha'i Blogcast. I am the host of this thing. My name is Rainn Wilson, and I'm really excited about this guest that I have here today. But you know what? I say that in every Baha'i Blogcast, so I need to say something different. I am super thrilled at the mind-blowing possibilities of the upcoming conversation with Ms. Erika Batdorf, who is a Baha'i performance artist who lives in Toronto. Near Toronto?
In Toronto.
In Toronto itself. Okay. Which is awesome. And I'm really excited to be speaking to her, about the world of performance art and how her art and her faith intersect. And it's going to be a pretty wild ride. I'm really excited. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Very, very happy to be here.
Great. And we're both kind of stooped over this microphone at the corner of my desk. And it was Tierney Sutton who originally introduced me to your work. And she'd always been like, I would be in New York. She'd be like, you've got to go see Erika's performing one night only. And I couldn't work. No, I was in Toronto. I was like, Erika's performing 3 nights and then blah, blah, blah. You've got to check this woman out. And her work is amazing. So I had been thinking about you and what you were doing, and through Tierney, and then we got introduced over the emails, and you're here in California.
I am.
So what brings you to California?
I am in Santa Barbara at a fabulous place called SBCAST, which is an art science retreat center, where scientists that are working with art and art that are using science kind of make stuff. It's a very, very cool place.
That's amazing. I've never heard of anything like that before. Like, what's an example? I've never even heard of the mashup of science and art. You know, in the faith, obviously, we talk about science and faith being harmonious and working together. How does science and art work together?
You know, in a way, I probably can't address that as intelligently as the people I'm working with. The fun part of this is I'm working with these people that are way, way, way smarter than I am. And most of the time I'm just asking them, what does that mean? And what does that mean? But I don't know, there's lots of VR, virtual reality. There's lots of working with biosensors where you hook people's bodies up to these machines that track their heart rate and their temperature. And you take that data and you turn it into things that can change the lights or change how the sound is, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
It also works the other way around, where I went to this amazing place called the Allosphere, which is this place where it's like VR. So picture VR, picture like going to a movie where there's 3D, you know, and the bugs are coming out of the film at you. But it's almost like you're inside of it. So, for example, we were looking at somebody's brain. Actually, this guy, one of these very smart people's brains, we were inside of it. So you can take scientific concepts.
With little virtual reality glasses in a big sphere space.
Absolutely. With sound, 3D sound, well, not 3D, like more than 3D sound.
Yeah, surround sound.
Surround sound.
Yeah, Google's phonic sound, yeah.
And so in that context, too, you can take scientific principles like quantum theory and string theory and things I don't understand and visualize them.
Yeah.
And then it helps people understand them. Right. Because a lot of that stuff in words makes no sense to me. But if you have a way that you can see it. Experience it. Mm-hmm. So they're sort of getting ready to do actually an installation in the Children's Museum where they're going to take some of these things and kids can come in and play this machine where they can play with an atom, I think. And so the atom is visualized, so you can change the shape and the color, and it only does, in most cases, what an atom could really do.
So where's the art in that? I get the science, but where's the art? So in art, we want to experience the human condition in some way. We want to connect with something greater than ourselves. It involves beauty and rhythm and shape and form and, you know, certain kind of vocabularies that artists use. How does the art blend into this work?
Well, that's what was fascinating about it. It took me a long time to even know that it was science because it was so beautiful and so it was quite abstract. It was music, which wasn't just music. It was music that was being triggered by certain scientific principles. So it was beautiful, and it was more like kind of being at a psychedelic, in the middle of a psychedelic painting.
Wow.
And the colors are changing and the sound is changing, and it's sort of like Disney meets Science Center meets graffiti art.
Wow. So the art is in the kind of the visceral experience that you're having of the piece, and also just the sheer physical beauty of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and also the interactivity of it, which I think is a changing way that a lot of art is happening, right?
Right.
So there's a way that you can play this like a guitar, so
you're not in a museum just looking at a square piece of canvas.
Yeah.
There's a interactivity.
Yeah. So this group of people that I'm working with, we brought a piece that we've been working on for a while called Burnish to this place. But it was also a chance for us to meet as a team. And there's a dancer, there's myself, and there's a art scientist who works with biosensors, these tracking body signals. And then there's my colleague, Mark David, who is the computational artist and sort of designer. He does sound, he does visuals, and he can take all that data and turn it into whatever you want.
Wow. That's amazing. And tell me about Burnish. What is the show Burnish?
Burnish.
And where does the word come from?
Yeah, the Burnish, to me, the text in Burnish is a lot of Baha'i text, actually. It's a lot about burning away the veils, the opening to the long obligatory prayer. But
isn't to burnish to polish?
Yes, exactly. So the piece goes through a lot of principles. I was trying to understand some of the writings about light in the heart. Like Baha'u'llah is always talking about light in the heart. And I think that's a gorgeous thing. And I love that, we're science and religion come together. So I was trying to understand the writings about fire and light and water from the point of view of science, actually, or like what is fire, and what is light, and where does light come from, and how can that?
Did you ever find that out? Because I don't know. What is fire and what is light? Because it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I think it's still mystical to me, but it was fun to kind of play. The text starts off with cleanse the heart of all markings. So, but I should contextualize how the text works. It's a one-on-one interactive piece. I'm wearing a kind of fantastical Indonesian rabbit mask.
Of course,
as we do. A person sits down across from me.
I know you wear it at home a lot, so why not just incorporate it into your
I wear it in the
performance?
bathroom. I hang out. Actually, I've worn the rabbit mask all over the world, actually, which has been fun because I wear it and then I see people come and talk to me and then I get them to wear it and then I take their picture of it, which is really fun.
I knew a guy who once decided to dress as a rabbit and ride a Greyhound bus across the length of Tennessee dressed as a giant rabbit. And he thought it was going to be hysterical, but it ended up being just a big pain in the butt.
It would be. I have traveled as a clown before, and you makeup smears on things, and it's
so
messy.
Anyways, back to Burnish.
Yes, back to Burnish. So in this
piece, it's a one-on-one interaction. You're wearing a mask.
And someone sits down across from me, and I hand them some headphones. I put the headphones on, and I whisper to them. And I whisper to them this very mystical text inspired by the writings that it then goes from sort of, cleanse the heart. How do you cleanse the heart? And then I go into, let's try light. What's light in the heart? And then light is a thing that comes from that comes from the sun. So it sort of looks at like, what is light? It's electromagnetic particles. And then it goes back to, what is fire? Fire is not actually a thing, it's an event, which is really interesting. Light is a thing, but fire is an event. So those kinds of things, and then you go back to the writings and you go, that's really interesting. If light is a thing and fire is an event, how does that change how you read those things in the writings, those kinds of things? And also when I was developing this piece, I was doing a lot of I was working with a group of environmental artists in Uzbekistan, of course, as we do.
Sure, wearing your rabbit mask.
And I was really interested in... we were working in Venice. We first premiered this piece at the Venice Biennale 2015. And so this group of international artists that was working together to create this group show where I was developing Burnish, we're given a tour of Venice to look at the environmental situation in Venice. I don't know if you know, Venice is flooding.
It's flooding completely.
It's flooding completely. Yeah. It's bad news. And all these scientists are basically saying all the stuff that they're doing to prevent it from flooding, they're not going to work. It was all bad news. And so I started thinking about, well, Baha'u'llah talks about the destruction of the old world. And I thought maybe it's supposed to flood. Maybe this is a good thing, because Venice is amazing. I love Venice. It's beautiful. But is flooding a good thing or a bad thing? So I started looking at flooding in the writings and immersion in water. And so it's...
Is this how you always create your pieces, is through kind of an inspiration through the writings and kind of, it sounds like in this case you had an investigation you wanted to go on. Like there were these themes and words that were really powerful to you that you didn't really know what the answer was. So you kind of did a deep dive in the writings and that informed the piece that you create?
Absolutely. And I would say that I start with a question that I don't understand, whether it's about the writing or my personal life. And I don't just kind of go, oh, let's throw a writing at this, because most of the time I don't know what the writings mean. But I want to, and I'm in love with them, so it makes me hang with them for a long time. So yeah, I do. It's almost like I start with a problem or a question or a thing that's obsessing me, because I feel like it's really hard to finish a piece of artwork unless I'm doing something that scares me or I'm absolutely obsessed with. Otherwise, I can't get to the end of the grant writing and all the turmoil you have to get through to make art happen. And then in the midst of that, I look for the writings that are going to answer those questions or dance with me in the process of creating.
No, that's interesting. Recently, I was texting my uncle, Rhett Diesner, who's a super knowledgeable Baha'i, because I was coming across all these quotes that were talking about like feeling unity in your heart and like the unity in the heart and feeling unity. And I was like, what does that mean? I mean, I know what love is, but how do you feel unity in your heart? I think there's a number of writings that equate unity and love as almost being synonymous. You can't really have one without the other, but it's kind of beyond me. So I don't know.
Yeah, some of the work I do relates to studying the body, the science of the body, and then looking at the writings from that point of view. This sort of covers all of my work as a mover and as a trainer of actors. I train actors to work with the body to create an authentic emotion. And in that context, I've learned a ton about the body, and then that information about the body then informs my understanding of the writings in a really exciting way. So I also do these workshops in the Baha'i community on embodiment and your devotional practice. And the idea of ecstasy, that Abdu'l-Baha talks about ecstasy. And I think a lot of us haven't figured out, like we read the word, and I, at a certain point in my life when I was struggling with some really hard stuff, whether it was chastity or whatever, when I was younger, I was like, I need to feel the love of God. I need it to not be this nice idea in my head. I need to feel it. And at that time as a dancer and a yoga practitioner, I went on this journey of like, what does that mean to feel the love of God? Not just think about it, but something that actually sustains me in a concrete way. And so over the years, the writings have become much more, we think of the heart. A lot of us think of the heart as this sort of Valentine's Day symbol. But the heart, if you actually study the heart, it is an incredible muscle. And scientifically speaking now, they know that if you can feel your heart, actually feel your heart, you'll be happier, your physical heart. And the experience
You're not talking about reaching into the chest.
No, not about entering the cavity of your body itself and touching your heart. No, I won't do that,
What do you mean?
So the sensations of the heartbeat and the blood flow, circulation. So a lot of people...
And what does that do if you get connected to that?
You actually are happier. Scientifically now proven that you'll be happier if you can feel the sensations of your heart. So the opening to the Seven Valleys, for example, the Valley of Search, where it says, in their search they have stoutly girded up the loins of service and seek at every moment to journey from the plane of heedlessness into the realm of being. So that line, seek at every moment to journey from the plane, think of that flat thing, of heedlessness into the realm, three-dimensional thing, of being.
And where's it from that you're referencing?
The Valley of Search, from the Seven Valleys and Four Valleys by Baha'u'llah. So I went on this journey of studying what does Abdu'l-Baha, what does Baha'u'llah say about the realm of being? And I got really into the realm of being. And that was really fascinating because a lot of the writings in the realm of being talk about the phenomenal world. Abdu'l-Baha says, we have come into the realm of being so that we can perfect our character. I'm paraphrasing there. And the realm of being is very much like your body, the body part, which is sometimes religious people can go, oh yeah, the body part, that's not so important. Well, actually, we're here to be in the realm of being for a reason. So, and I also was really curious about that. How do you journey from in every moment from the plane of heedlessness into the realm of being. Meanwhile, I was studying a lot about trauma and dissociation, the thing about how trauma can make us not feel our bodies and how dangerous that is. So the combination of a kind of superficial religiosity can create and encourage dissociation, whether it's meditating yourself out of your body or shaming yourself out of your body. So I really wanted to understand what Baha'u'llah meant by the realm of being and why we're supposed to be in this body. And certainly as an actor, as a mover, that was particularly important to me.
You can't really separate the body from the spirit in a way. That's the old, is it the Descartesian ideal that, where we have a mind and a body, or we have a higher self and just a lower self. And they're so interconnected that, there's countless studies about things that we do in our bodies that affect our spirits and our souls and our minds. Just smiling throughout the day actually makes you happier. They found, like, literally just raising those muscles in your face, And
it goes deeper than that. So they now know so much about our physiological awareness, our ability to feel our bodies changes a lot about who we are. So I train actors in this ability to be able to feel their bodies in a way that affects the audience in terms of emotion. So I've been doing that a long time. And one of the reasons I've hooked up with these art scientists is because one of these scientists is really interested in biosensors and emotion. So I don't like the word emotion so much, and he doesn't either, because what I'm interested in is physiological. Like if I can get my body, feel my breathing, feel my blood flow, feel gravity, and be able to, like, memorize text and choreography at the same time, it has a different effect on the audience. The way that, you see a dog and it makes you happy because they're they're not thinking about being, they're just being. And so that concept of being, realm of being, how do we just be? And the fact that actually a lot of the behaviors that we have in the world, whether it's drug culture or violence, make it very hard for us to be present in our actual being. So I was really investigating the writings about breath. The diaphragm is the only muscle that is both voluntary and involuntary. And that even in itself is a fascinating very simple scientific piece of information. And if you look at the writings on the breaths of the Holy Spirit, all the writings about breathing, and, there's a writing that says the only way that we can deal with rage is through the breath of the Holy Spirit. Well, they actually know that breathing stops the production of adrenaline.
Right.
Duh.
Right.
So as Baha'is, we believe that science and religion are supposed to be in harmony. So I've been looking at that actually scientifically.
So this is really like on a higher metaphysical level. You're talking about we're told in the writings in countless different ways that everything in the physical plane is a spiritual representation. We're in a shadow world. We're in a reflection. We're living in a world of reflections of the spiritual truth. We see a mountain here, and in the other worlds of God, what a mountain might actually be, we're seeing kind of mirrored here on this physical plane. So you're talking about that kind of enacted in the body as well.
And in a really practical way, that if you, when you're praying, if you're feeling the inhale and the exhale, you then can moment to moment. We have all these fantastic things. Your heart beats every moment. You breathe every moment, like till you're dead. You have to deal with those things. So to journey from every moment from the plane of heedlessness, like I can space out and forget and, but if I remember the breath, if I remember the sensation of my heartbeat from moment to moment, I can start to work that program. So that it's not just during my obligatory prayer and just during, or even how I'm saying my Allahu Abhas.
I wish you could do a bigger video on that or something for the Baha'i community, because I really feel like prayer is so disconnected in the Baha'i community. It's like, get out the prayer books and kind of everyone sits there in a certain way, and you can't sit cross-legged, but you can sit this way, and it's appropriate to do this, but it's not appropriate to do that. And then someone kind of drones on without any emotion in the text, and everyone kind of sits there quietly and their minds are wandering, thinking about their shopping lists. And that constitutes prayer, in our community. And if you don't have a connected prayer in our faith community, you don't have a faith community. And I always work with youth and young people to do meditation practice with them, and try and really dive into prayer, sit on the floor in the circle, or turn the lights out, or whatever we can do to kind of like connect with the words more deeply and connect through our bodies.
Absolutely. I do workshops at mostly Llewellyn, and I want to do more on transforming your devotional practice. And it's incredibly useful for like things like chastity. You're really practical. And that is a really exciting thing that definitely we need to have more of that. If you look at the pictures of Shoghi Effendi, Abdul Baha, and Baha'u'llah, I mean, Mirza Mehdi died walking, pacing, and praying. Not sitting and praying, but walking and praying. Abdul Baha would walk in the gardens, those huge gardens that we have.
Yeah.
We walk. You can walk for a long time.
And it's interesting because there's walking meditations in Buddhism, certainly. And we also know about the healing power of walking to heal trauma, because it sends electromagnetic impulses between the left and right hemispheres of the brain as you walk, which is a very healing thing that humanity has been doing for hundreds of thousands of years, is walking. There's something really powerful and healing in walking.
Yes, exactly. So I think that our some of our kind of religiosity, shall we say, or our fear, I think also this relates to the Persian culture is this rich culture, but many of the Iranians that have come to us are traumatized. And we haven't quite allowed space for these people to heal and tell their stories, and to, yes, of course, these martyrs, these people that have sacrificed their lives, we want to be positive about that, but also that has an effect on people. And we need a place to cry and mourn and celebrate in a way that is embodied. And that's difficult to do without actually vocalizing and moving. And what we know about trauma now does require, like you say, walking and moving. And that's how I think the arts are critical, not just to make pretty songs for Baha'i events, but for people to actually have a place where they can mourn together, celebrate together in a way that's not just in your head.
That's beautiful. Well, we're 20 minutes into the interview, and I haven't even started at the beginning of the interview. This has been a great conversation. I'm going to backtrack a little bit here. Where does all this come from? How did you become a Baha'i? And how did you become a performance artist?
When I lived in Nova Scotia, where there were, at that time, and maybe still, not a whole lot of Baha'is, and I had to go and stay. I had epilepsy, and my mom knew this woman who was really, really nice, who she'd met 10 years before, who was from Lebanon, and she said, I think she'll let you stay with her, because I had to go to this big hospital in the big city of Halifax. So I got in the car with 3 doctors at 9 and went and stayed with this amazing family. And this woman, this Sarah Link, was a Baha'i. And I stayed in this home, and it was just, typical kind of loving Baha'i and Lebanese who was, good cook, really good food. And it was in the middle of March, and they weren't eating. They weren't eating during the daytime. And they would feed me with all this fabulous food. They would sit at the table with me, but they wouldn't eat. And that was very strange. And then we celebrated New Year's in March. I was like, what's that about? And my mother actually was a biblical scholar. She had sat us down not long before that and said, I think Jesus is going to return in the name of the Father, and we have to be looking for him. And so we had, at that point, had started going to different churches, and, she was reading to us from the Bhagavad Gita. She was really searching. So I came back and told her about this family that didn't eat and celebrated New Year's in March. And she called them and said, what are you? And they sent her, so they mailed her. Yes, in the old days of mail, they mailed her some books, and they started to come down and visit her. And she was a raging alcoholic, and so she became a Baha'i. In fact, when she became a Baha'i, the National Spiritual Assembly said, we'll give you a year to quit drinking. So she taught the faith with a beer in her hand for a year.
Because she had a free pass for a year. She's like, live it up.
Yeah, so it was great. We'd have these firesides with her drinking beer. And she quit drinking after that year, which is a pretty big change in my family. And she was an extraordinary painter who was pretty smart. I would say, pretty smart lady. She also struggled with mental illness, which was challenging. And I would say that a lot of what I know about art is from growing up with that crazy lady, who Thea Witten. She was one of the first people that actually gathered the writings on the arts, the Baha'i writings on the arts. And then Anne Gordon Perry, I don't know if you know her, she's been very involved in the arts, helped with that compilation. And a lot of it I learned from her. I was a science brain kind of kid. I was going to go into physics. I was really good at math. I could do math in my sleep. But then my sister, did this play where, in the high school where none of the guys want to act. And she was in a play, and her husband didn't want to, her husband, the actor, copped out with laryngitis. And so I had learned the lines with her to help her run her lines. And I was in this play and I played a man and I got a lot of laughs. So I kind of started doing theater more as a way to rescue my social life, which was terrible with a crazy mother in a small town in Nova Scotia. And then I just sort of fell in love with theater and I started hitchhiking as a clown.
Wait, okay. This is nuts. Wow, I'm reeling in this story. This is a fantastic story and beautiful. That's so cool. How old are you at this point?
High school. I left high school a year early and went to university early because it was a bit of a brain.
So you're 17 or 18 and you fall in love with just performance, inspired by your mother, and then you start hitchhiking around Canada as a clown?
Well, I used to go to Green Acre Baha'i School, and we didn't have much money, so I would hitchhike from Nova Scotia, and I would take the trucker boat over to Maine.
Yeah.
There's a trucker boat called the Evangeline, and I would go as a clown because I thought it would be safer to hitchhike. I mean, people hitchhike in Nova Scotia, but everybody knows everybody, so you're picked up by somebody's uncle, so you're not going to, not going to be the end of the world because somebody's uncle is going to know somebody's uncle, so you're probably going to be safe.
Right.
But the hitchhiking, I wasn't interested in doing performance at this point. I was going to study math and physics. In fact, I got a big math scholarship, and that's what I was going to do. But hitchhiking as a clown became really fun and really exciting. I remember being
That's kind of a performance art in itself,
exactly.
Just hitchhiking as a clown.
I didn't know what
I want to do a piece
was,
with you hitchhiking as a clown. Document
really
that, video it, and oh my God, riding with long haul truckers.
Exactly what I did. That's exactly what I did. And I wouldn't talk, and I had a red nose, and I made my costume. There's a wonderful secondhand store in Nova Scotia called Frenchie's. Those secondhand people, it's worth going to Nova Scotia to go to Frenchie's. Big, giant bins of lice-filled, fabulous clothing. So I got my costume at Frenchie's. And when I was on the trucker boat, it was really exciting. Somebody's birthday. And so someone thought that someone had gotten a clown for somebody's birthday. And what was exciting about being a clown when you don't talk is people tell you their dreams. People start...
Oh, so you would be silent.
I would be silent. People would ask me questions and I wouldn't answer. And
so they would just start spilling out their guts to you.
Yes.
That's amazing.
So all of these guys
I want to do
on the
that.
boat,
I want to do
really
that.
fun.
I want to be on a trucker boat.
Yeah, it's really fun. And people tell you all kinds of things that I don't think they would tell a stranger typically.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then I did this thing. I would have sparklers. So I would do these things where it's a little bit like Burnish, actually, now that I think of it. I would say, I had this way of saying, make a wish. And so I took all of these boat guys. These guys wanted to be most of them talked about wanting to be captains of ships, or they wanted to sail around the world. So I took them all to the back of the boat. And this first time I did this, and I gave them a balloon, and they had the choice. They could either let go of the balloon and get one wish, or twist it into two and get two wishes. But if it burst, you get one balloon. And to see these big guys on the back of this boat trying to decide whether to twist the balloon or not to twist the balloon. Let it go.
Wow.
Which was really exciting. I'll never forget that moment.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Wow. And then you would go to Green Acre.
Then I would go to Green Acre.
Dressed as a clown. And you'd take off your clown outfit once you were there?
Yeah. Well, no, I would do clown things for the Baha'i classes and stuff. Yeah. And so a lot of it started doing clown things for the Baha'i classes because I wasn't really good with kids.
Do you have any pictures of you as this clown character? Was it a character?
It was definitely a character. It was called, I named it myself Bahaj, which I think that's from the writing somewhere.
Bahaj?
Bahaj, Bahodge. Gotta look that up.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. So that started tiptoeing you down the road to being an artist and a Baha'i. So they kind of happened at the same time.
Because of my mother especially, art and Baha'i were very linked for me. It was also, leaving out the details of a lot of kind of crazy childhood that wasn't so fun.
Sure.
And
we all do.
Yes, exactly. And so
I wrote a whole book where I left out a lot of the
details of the horrors of, I don't know, sometimes I think we shouldn't leave out the details because then the people that need to hear that some successful people had horrible...
Suffered in weird ways, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so they were really linked to me. And it was, in some ways, I probably should have been a math nerd. Maybe that's why I'm hanging out with these art scientists now, except that I can't even count anymore. But yeah, and then I just fell into theater and acting, but I didn't want to play. I was always the one the young pretty girl showing up with a King Lear monologue going, why can't I play King Lear? I wasn't interested in commercial theater because as a woman, I thought, I'm just going to play all the boring, stupid stuff. And I wasn't interested in what the commercial industry of theater allowed me to do. So I knew that I was going to have to write my own stuff. I mean, in many ways, I'm not. My mother was a performance artist, but technically, I do some performance artists, but really, I'm a theater maker, performance maker.
Okay.
And was a choreographer for a while. So I definitely moved fully into the world of
and
performance.
also, as I've read and some articles about you, interdisciplinary artist, really,
basically.
Because you're incorporating, film and video and music. You write music, you write poetry too?
Yeah, a lot of my work is influenced by poetry. I mean, I sing with some musicians in Germany. That happened traveling through Uzbekistan, things you trip
Dressed
over.
as a clown?
No, but maybe that's where Baha'is comes. It does. Well, after a while, traveling hitchhiking as a young person, you give that up for good reasons.
I have a little history with performance art myself. I'm just going to use that phrase just because it's the more common phrase. But I did a retreat with a woman from Grotowski-style theater in Poland, and we locked ourselves in a church for a week over a winter break in college, and all that was in the church were oranges and bowls of water and bells and drums and scarves, and then we just saw what happened, and we just made theater in that room.
Was it good or was it a nightmare?
It was fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, it was fascinating. It was just kind of like these experiential theater, like, let's just see what happens. If you have a group of performers in a room with those things and you have no timetable, like, what happens?
Right.
And that was the performance. Sometimes it would be wild dances and crazy. Sometimes people would be bursting into tears, and it was very strange. And I've always loved kind of experimental theater. I've been involved in a lot of experimental theater in New York and worked with Richard Foreman and a lot of other Andre Gregory. And my wife did performance art in the East Village, and she worked at with Mabou Mines and at PS 122 and La Mama, and so we spent a lot of years kind of in that scene. I find it really fascinating. Wooster Group,
they do some amazing work.
Amazing stuff. I realized at the top I didn't even properly introduce you to the listening audience of dozens of people that will actually hear this podcast. Erika Batdorf is an award-winning performer, director, writer, and choreographer. Since 1983, her work has appeared in Canada, France, Germany, Greece, Finland, Denmark. Man, you get around. Italy, Switzerland, Korea, Indonesia, Georgia. You love Georgia.
I do love Georgia.
And in the U.S., in such places as Smithsonian Institute, Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, Harvard University, and many other New York City and Toronto arts venues. So, Erika, one thing I was finding out online is that you have a training technique that you've developed. You'd called it the Batdorf technique, and now you call it KTP. And I'd just love to hear a little bit about that technique and the training you do with young artists.
The training is designed to allow performers, dancers and actors in particular, right now I'm focused on actors, to recreate emotion through specific awareness of their body. So it's like mindfulness practice on steroids.
Wow. So
you practice, and it's emotionally intense. And as acting is, right, in the early stages of training. Can be. So it allows a process of training to feel your breathing, the flow of your blood, your relationship to gravity, pain and pleasure, actually all the things that relate to your involuntary systems, the things you don't have control over in your body. And those things now scientifically are known to be directly correlated to emotion. What we call, a big word that I use now, interoceptive. So interoceptive basically means all the sensations in your body or the systems in your body that are involuntary. Versus the things like, you can move your arm. That's actually what they call exteroceptive. So a dancer or an athlete, for example, can have incredible physical awareness, but it's largely exteroceptive, or the muscles that they can control pretty easily. Like you actually probably, maybe you can, Rainn, because you're spectacular. Control your kidneys? Can you no?
Yes, I can. Watch. Did you see that?
That was fabulous.
They just did a double
I did.
backflip.
I saw that. So the systems in our body that we don't actually have conscious control over. And what they've learned in the world of trauma and the world of emotion, which is highly, questionable word in some ways. People have different definitions of what emotion is. But one of the popular definitions of emotion right now is the ever-changing landscape of the body. So the idea is to learn to ride and stay present with the ever-changing landscape of the body. Now, that's easy to do when you're sitting in your meditation pillow with your eyes closed. But what if you have to smell, taste, touch, see, and hear? Uta Hagen for real. Those of you who don't know, Uta Hagen's a fabulous actor-trainer. Actor-teacher who uses sensory work. So obviously you have a memory by you smell something, or what if you're really smelling, really tasting, really using the sensations of your skin, listening and seeing, and feeling those involuntary systems. It's really quite hard to do, especially with memorized text. So it's a fairly long time to train in this, but it's absolutely possible to do it. And we're now doing things like with these art scientists studying the reaction of the audience to someone who is more or less hooked up, aware of those internal sensations.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Wow, that's really cool. I find a lot of installation art and performance art and interdisciplinary art can often be very cerebral, and so it kind of leaves me feeling cold. But when it's great, it can make you feel all kinds of emotions you didn't even know you had. But I don't know, like, what's the difference? You know what I mean? Like, why do you see a piece and it leaves you cold, and it just is someone talking gobbledygook with a helmet on their head and pink ballet slippers and doing a monologue about their cousin's suicide, and it doesn't mean anything to you. And then you can see other things. You can see, work of, Wooster Group or Mabou Mines or something, and it's really like deeply moving in some ways.
One of the big distinctions, one of the reasons I don't tend to call myself a performance artist, even though other people do, especially in the US, where frankly, theater has gotten very commercial versus Europe and Canada, where there's a little bit more funding, so people like me can do weird stuff.
That's where all the Canadian tax dollars are going.
That's all of it.
To funding your weirdo Baha'i theater.
If they only knew. The difference is training. Because a lot of performance art, which I can love performance art, but there's good actors and there's bad actors, good theater, bad theater. So I don't want to comment on performance art versus theater, but typically the people who are performing in performance art are not trained to perform. They have conceptual ideas, they have visual art background, but they're not trained as performers. I'm trained as a performer. Hardcore. I have dance training and actor training and Shakespeare, and I did all that. So I'm a performer who's doing non-linear theater, I'm not doing traditional story. I'm not doing what people normally think of as theater, but I'm trained as a performer. So people call me a performance artist, but I would say, I'm just a theater artist who happens not to do traditional theater structures.
That your advice to young actors and young artists is to get training? And do you have any more specific advice to young Baha'i artists?
Yeah, I think there's a phenomenon that can happen, that I've seen happen, because the Baha'i youth are so passionate about service to the faith. They're so passionate about getting out there as soon as they can to do junior youth classes, to go and work in an orphanage in a country. And this is happening not just to Baha'is, but to often, I would say, wealthier communities who can take a gap year. So those people that can afford to take a gap year, they go work in an orphanage for a year. And some of them have the desire to be artists, but because the arts have become dumbed down by our materialistic society, people think, we all know you have to study to be a doctor. But we don't really think that you have to study to be an artist, but you actually have to have just as much training to be an artist as to be a doctor. And, in the Baha'i Writings, it doesn't say arts and entertainment. It says arts and sciences. They're equated, or arts and worship. And I
know I used to be an artist, and then I morphed over into being in the entertainment business. Oh, that's another story.
Oh, I'm curious about that story, though, because I used to perform at the Stellar Adler After Hours Club. Do you know that place? It's
in New York?
Yeah, in New York. And I would do, sketch comedy in those clubs, basically to pay the bills for the PS 122 gigs that I was doing that would not pay very well. So I would keynote at the Stellar, and all of these people who were trying to, get picked up by HBO would come to me, I used to do art.
Yeah.
And
the challenge for me is to balance art and show business, because I have a lot of different hats that I wear. This isn't about me, but I do producing, and I have a digital media company, and I do writing and directing, and I just acted in a giant action shark movie starring Jason Statham, so I do
excellent
entertainment stuff. But then I also did a play at the Geffen Theater, a really experimental one person monologue by Will Eno that was very Samuel Beckett-esque. That's all about language and the failings of language to be able to sum up our feelings or to be able to tell our stories. But we have to tell our stories, and yet language can never fully reveal who we are. So I always try and make sure that I'm taking time to do art and to push myself in certain ways. But that's a different. Yeah,
but no, it's absolutely related, because I think some of the young people out there think in terms of, they may not know, and I think it's really useful for them to hear this other stuff that you're doing. Because I think that they sometimes may see your work and not get everything that's behind it, that it's just about, being funny and getting on a TV show. It's not just about that. And you're clearly being very smart businessman as an artist, which you have to be, right? I have to have as much of a good business hat on my head as I do an arts hat on my head to make this career fly.
That's one of the advice that I give to young artists a lot, has to do with like knowing when you're wearing which hat. And if one puts on their artist hat, like just be an artist, make works of tremendous power and beauty, and dig deep and challenge audiences and make something great and strive to excavate, but then if you're producing, you're trying to get an agent, or you're trying to raise funds, or you're doing more commercial work or whatever, just take that artist hat off and put on the other one, but know the difference.
Yes. I give the same talk to my.
Wow, how about that?
Great talk. And it's an important talk, and it's also.
But you were saying about, sorry.
I was talking about training.
Yeah, and also for Baha'i artists, because I kind of cut you off a little bit.
Yes. So for Baha'i artists, I think there's this desire. It's very hard to be an artist and not work 24/7 at certain phases of because the arts are not respected in the world yet, and they're not necessarily always funded in the same way that, being a doctor is. So you can rank up a whole bunch in debt as a doctor and pay it back, because you're going to be a doctor. But what if you want to be an experimental artist and you don't have the fortune of landing a TV show? You have to work really, really, really hard.
Kids are coming out of NYU with, $100,000, $200,000 in debt.
Crazy.
To be an actor.
Yes. And so you have to, that training is really, really important. The other thing that's advantageous about that training is if you have that training, in some ways, I believe, you're not going to be as susceptible to the fame racket, because if you have training, you can teach, you can apply it in other contexts, you can have a quality of work that people will recognize at a higher and higher level, and you'll be taken seriously. But if you don't have the training, you're going to have a short-lived unless you're going to have a kind of a short-lived thing going on, and you're not going to do what Baha'u'llah wants you to do, is to be excellent at your craft. You need to train. And early on in my stage of my development, I consulted with the LSA. I said, I was being offered a $20,000. This is a long time ago. That was a lot of money then in Canada, too. I was being offered a full ride, basically, whatever that would be now in the States, to do math. And before computer sciences. It was crazy for me to give up computer science to do theater. But I wanted to do theater, and I consulted with the LSA. I said, this is nuts. I'm going to give away this massive scholarship because I want to be a clown.
Yeah.
At that time, and they sort of said yes, but find a good school, was the LSA's response. And this was an LSA in Nova Scotia, with most of them didn't even have a high school education. Yeah. And the power of the institution. They were like, yes, but find a good school. And so I found some of the best trainers in sophisticated clown work, not just Barnum, not just circus clowning. And then that led me to theater, and that led me to other training, of course, in Grotowski and all those kinds of things. But I think that sense of being really clear about what your training is and getting good training is incredibly important. And it may mean a sacrifice, but we know as Baha'is that the arts are critical right now, especially, I believe, in North America, where the diseases are, yes, there's poverty in our country, but there's particularly spiritual poverty in our country. And that's what I think artists can address, which you're doing so beautifully with Soul Pancake and other things that you're doing. And I think in that regard, addressing the sort of spiritual poverty of our country is worth sacrificing for. And that may mean getting training and, having a job that, doesn't always pay you what you like to be paid. And it may not lead to fame, and it's not about fame. It's about being excellent. And that fame is, as you know, it's a wild card, and it may or may not happen for you. there are other ways. Like I teach, and I love to teach. I love to mentor.
Sure.
And that funds a lot of my artistic work.
You get to travel?
And I get to travel a ton, and I get to mentor all kinds of people in and out of my teaching work.
Plus you have the audiences that you interact with. So there's just a lot of different facets to the work that you do and ways that you connect with people through it. That's really super exciting. So a question I ask all of our guests is, what are your current spiritual struggles right now? What are you most dealing with?
I always struggle with the plan of God versus the plan of Erika. So, and of course, the will of God is a big question. And how does one reconcile the notion of following your true self, independent investigation of the truth? I love obviously we're supposed to be immersed in the plan. But sometimes as an artist, it's a big struggle. It takes a lot of work to make art happen in the world. It takes a lot of time. I'm a parent. My spouse isn't a Baha'i, so there's a lot of time spent, both, grant writing and traveling, touring is, time consuming and tiring, and that along with, and the Ruhi in my home and the devotional gathering in my home, how do I balance all of that? I mean, this is not particular to artists. Balancing all of that is tough, but certainly the struggle between, do I invest all of my energy in my art practice because it's very integrated with the Baha'i, the writings and all of that, or do I, invest in my Ruhi and devotional stuff? I find that a real challenge in terms of how to balance those things.
Yeah.
Just in terms of hours of the day. And, as I get older, I more and more I want to just, serve Baha'u'llah all the time. But does one serve Baha'u'llah within the community or in the greater world?
Right.
And how do you decide what's the best use of your time?
Right. That's a big one. That's great. Do you have any quotes about the arts or related to the arts that really kind of excite a deep conversation in you?
I love the writings, especially because, I'm surrounded by the Toronto theater community, which is, I've discovered that you old Southern Californians are real hippies. and there's a lot of spirituality here, which is fantastic. In Toronto, the theater scene is very atheistic, overtly and intensely, which, I do well there, but certainly I find that a challenge. So I love the Baha'i writings that deal with God as the unseen essence. Because what a lot of my atheist friends, they don't believe in the same God I don't believe in.
Sure.
And so I love the writings like, "O my servant, if ye could apprehend with what wonders of my munificence and bounty I have willed," I'm going to cry, "to entrust your souls, you would of a truth rid yourselves of attachment to all created things, and would gain a true knowledge of your own selves, which is the same as the comprehension of mine own being."
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And then it goes on, and you would perceive
well
with your inner and outer eye, and as manifest as the revelation of my effulgent name, the seas of my loving kindness moving within you. So I think as a theater artist who gets to do this work where I'm trying to, help my students, my collaborators, myself, deeply mine the self with a base in the realm of being, with a base in the physiological being, I feel like that's a tangible connection to my colleagues, whether they're religious or not, whether they're Baha'is or not, who get that as artists, what we are trying to do is mine the best of ourselves, and using metaphor and using breath and using beautiful text, all the Baha'i writings in tone, melodious. I mean, we as performers have so much to offer to the community in terms of those things.
I think that was really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll add to that just a very little thing that I always talk about and kind of obsesses me is, one of the central titles of God is the unknowable. Like, God is unknowable. And yet in our daily obligatory prayer that we say every single day, like, our purpose is to know God. So knowing the unknowable is our life's mission. And what a beautiful mystery that is. In the Lakota Sioux talk of God as the name for God is Wakantanka, which literally translates as the great mystery.
Absolutely.
So I don't believe in a judgmental God that creates a heaven and hell and is looking down on us like Santa Claus and who gets their presents and who doesn't, and is either sending someone to heaven or hell. But I do believe in the great mystery and struggling to know the unknowable. And that's what art is too.
Exactly. That's what I feel like I have the pleasure, the gift, the bounty of wrestling with every day in my work, and have the opportunity to kind of outreach to the world with, in the particular obscure, crazy art scenes that I'm in. And that I feel like is a universal struggle that we all have, whether religious or Baha'i or not Baha'i. I think we're all struggling with that mystery, that unknown.
That's beautiful. Why don't we just end it there? That was really a good place, a resonant place for us to end our conversation. This has been really exciting and thrilling, even more than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, really fun.
You have a website, erikabatdorf.com.
I do. Batdorf.org.
Oh, sorry, .org.
Just batdorf.org.
Batdorf.org. And it's got information about your performances, what you do, your resume, your history, and people can contact you there too.
Yep, absolutely.
If they want you to come dressed as a clown,
absolutely,
and perform in their
I'll
living
wear
room.
Funny clothes for you.
As what is it? Badosht?
Bahaj. I haven't done Bahaj in years, but yeah, I could drag that guy out.
Oh, fantastic! That's great. It's been such a pleasure, and thank you to the dozens of people who are tuning in to Baha'i Blogcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for listening to Baha'i Blogcast. Hope you enjoyed the episode and the conversation. Check out more fun Baha'i stuff on Baha'iBlog.net. Thank you so much, and good night.